the holy shit moment had not sold that well. I did 50 podcasts and I was on national television a couple of times and a ton of radio, and it was covered glowingly in the LA Times and the Houston Chronicle, and still it didn't catch people. It was not one of those books that people just really wanted. And in the publishing industry, there's an adage that is, you're only as good as your last book. And so we were really struggling to figure out, okay, well, what am I doing with my career now? Because I'd sort of evolved from fitness into motivation, and that wasn't taking off. So career-wise, I'm like, it seems like my writing career is on life support here. So that was just issue number one.
Welcome to the Stark Reflections on Writing and Publishing podcast. There has never been a better time for writers. More information, options, and opportunities are available to you, but navigating these requires insight. Join Mark Leslie Lefebvre as he draws upon more than a quarter century of experience as a writer, a bookseller, and a trusted book industry consultant to explore and reflect on the writing and publishing landscape to help you make informed choices on your writer journey.
Hello, Reflectives, and welcome to episode 190 of the Stark Reflections podcast. This is your host, Mark Leslie Lefebvre. In this episode, I have an interview with James Fell, the Sweary Historian. James is the author of On This Day in History, Shit Went Down. Now, I have to caution you, dear listener, that because, James' tagline is the Sweary Historian, and the fact that I normally bleep out and try to edit out swear words, although I'm told I left a couple swear words in my episode with Denise Masser a few episodes back, and I missed them. My apologies. I did try to keep this a family-friendly show, but this episode is not going to be family-friendly in any way, shape, or form. Too many F-bombs, too many swear words to even bother. Even the title of the book, On This Day in History, Shit Went Down. So, if you're offended by foul language, by adult language, please stop listening. Do not listen to this episode. It is just going to upset you. However, if you're okay with an F-bomb and some adult language, then fucking yeah, we're going to have a really fun episode. And this is really weird because I do try not to swear on this podcast. But this is a special episode. It's episode 190. Today also happens to be my birthday, but I'm going to get to that in the personal update, which is coming up after this ad read from this episode's sponsor. This episode is sponsored by Findaway Voices. Findaway Voices is a platform that allows you the ability to get your audiobook out into the global market of more than 40 retail and library markets. If you are looking for a professional narrator to work with, you can find one through Findaway Voices. They manage it in a very hands-on way where you put in your RFP, you kind of say what you're looking for, and they will go and find from among their thousands of voice talents around the world, 5 to 10 different voices that they think would be suitable for your project. It's basically different voices and different ranges of prices, so you can kind of make an informed decision. Now, if you already have your audiobooks available, you can use Findaway Voices just for distribution. You upload your audio files, and then you decide where you're going to make them available. They have some great promotional opportunities, some price promos with Chirp Audiobooks, which is owned by BookBub, as well as through Apple. And if you're looking for ways that you can leverage your audiobook platforms in a global way, you want to look no further than Findaway Voices, and you can check them out over at starkreflections.ca/Findaway. And comments from recent episodes include this one on Twitter from Edwin Downward. He said, I did the large print idea when prepping to record myself for practicing for future public readings, but it never occurred to me to highlight key punctuation, etc. The big slow down marks are another great idea, given reading too fast has been a big problem for me. Now, Edwin was referring to episode 189, where I interviewed Rod Carley, and that was one of the bits of advice that Rod, who is an actor and director and theatrical background as well as an author, and we were talking about tips for doing readings. and that was one of the tips. So thank you, Edwin, so much for sharing the fact that you found that useful. If you have a comment, you can feel free to @me @MarkLeslie on Twitter, or you can leave a comment for any episode of the podcast over at starkreflections.ca. And did you hear that weird creaking noise? So I got this new chair. This is not comments part, but it's just me mumbling. I got this new chair recently, and it's a really great chair, and it's really comfortable, but it's just so bloody squeaky and creaky as I move and shift. I really should be standing to do this reading, but I'm sitting in front of a larger monitor, so it's easier for me to see as I'm doing the editing and recording. But every once in a while, I shift slightly in the chair, and it makes this really odd creaking noise, and yeah, I'm just not going to be able to remove that from the audio. So I thought I'd explain it. Just so you know, I don't have gas. It's just the chair is making this squeaky noise. So like, yeah, right, Mark. Yeah. See, there it goes again. It's squeaking again. Anyways, okay, now on to personal update. So today is wow, that was what happened to my voice. Hard to believe I'm 52, but my voice cracks like I'm a 13-year-old boy. Today, I am celebrating 52 times around the sun. I'm celebrating my 52nd birthday. It is Thursday, May 6th, 2021, as I'm recording this to try to get this episode out late today, and in the overnight feed with the show notes being published on Friday, May 7th. But I'm recording this really early in the day. I normally do it later in the day, but I'm going to be taking the sort of second half of the day off. Liz is coming home early from work and has some stuff planned, so I'm wanting to relax with her. So apart from some work I did early this morning, some early morning writing, and a clubhouse that I'm doing with Dan Wood and Tara from Kobo, talking about Canada, what's going on with ebooks in Canada. That's about it. I'm going to actually enjoy and relax for the rest of the day, I hope. In terms of just personal update, May has been a great month so far for me in terms of my dedication to writing 600 words a day on on Fright Night's Big City, which is a December 2021 release for my Canadian Werewolf series. So I've just dedicated to try to write a minimum of 600 words a day all the way through May. And so far, so good. I mean, some days I've hit 1,500 words, other days, I think this morning I did 450 words, and then I got all distracted taking the garbage out and other things I had to do early in the morning before the garbage trucks showed up. And of course, change the dad jokes that I have outside. But that's okay. It's okay to take it easy and cut yourself some slack. So anyways, that's it for personal updates. Why don't we get right into this interview with James Fell? And again, I just want to warn you, if you're not into adult language, then you're probably going to want to skip this interview and this episode. Hey, James, welcome back to the Stark Reflections podcast.
It's a pleasure. You're the only podcast I'm doing right now because we're pals.
Well, I really appreciate that you coming on the first time when I reached out to you, and again, thank you so much for coming back, because I'm so fascinated by your author journey. Just for anyone who wasn't fortunate enough to catch the last episode you were on, where we were talking about the holy shit moment. Your background is in journalism.
Well, not really. I mean, I did a master's degree in history and then an MBA. So I was good at writing and researching, and then I worked in business
and healthy things.
But I mean, I guess journalism in that, yes, I did write for the Los Angeles Times for almost a decade and the Chicago Tribune. But I was a freelancer. This was investigative journalism into investigating the corruption in the fitness industry and the diet industry and stuff like that. But I never went to journalism school or anything like that. I was a freelancer for a lot of different places, including the LA Times and Chicago Tribune.
And so the last time we had talked, you had just launched the Holy Shit Moment, which was I thought was a fascinating nonfiction look, Malcolm Gladwell-esque in its approach to understanding that aha thing that can happen, which I still think is
the life-changing epiphany is is what it is. And my literary agent, Peter Steinberg, he referred to it when he was selling it to publishing houses. He referred to it as a combination of Malcolm Gladwell's Blink with Jen Sincero's "You're a Badass,"
Oh my
and
God, yeah,
Jen
yeah.
Sincero was actually one of his clients at the time,
Okay,
and I thought that was actually pretty apt. But
yeah.
unfortunately, it did not sell nearly as well as either a Gladwell or a Sincero book.
And I bought two copies of it too. So I bought it in hardcover and I also got the audio. But then you had your own epiphany or your own holy shit moment that led to this new book that we're going to be talking a little bit more about today
Mhm.
on this day in history. Can you talk a little bit about that epiphany and how that happened?
Well, I mean, when I wrote the holy shit moment, it was a scientific analysis. I really, I wanted to know, how did these things work? None of this fluff, and I was never a fluff and nonsense motivational pablum guy. I wanted to know the real science of how shit works. And
Right.
so I went really deep into it, and I made it as much of a how-to as I could, when you consider it's like, how do you create a how-to book about a life-changing epiphany? And the answer is, well, you only kind of sort of can, and I did my very best. In the process, I personally learned a lot about how they work and how to recognize them. And what happened was, on April 17th of last year, 2020, psychologically, I was just not in a good place. I was concerned about a few different things. One was that the holy shit moment had not sold that well. I did like 50 podcasts, and I was on national television a couple of times, and a ton of radio, and it was covered glowingly in the LA Times and the Houston Chronicle, and I was blasting it out on my blog and social media, and it didn't catch people. It was not one of those books that people just really wanted. And in the publishing industry, there's an adage that is, you're only as good as your last book.
Right.
And so we were really struggling to figure out, okay, well, what am I doing with my career now? Because I'd sort of evolved from fitness into motivation, and that wasn't taking off. So career wise, I'm like, it seems like my writing career is on life support here. So that was just issue number one. And I was also just really concerned about, it was looking like Trump was going to be reelected, and I was not at all happy about that. I mean, even being Canadian, it was just, I was very very attuned to what was going on in the United States, and I didn't think I'd be able to handle another 4 years of him being president. And also, the COVID lockdowns had just started, and
Right.
I'm married to a physician who said, this is going to get bad and it's going to last a long time. So buckle down. So I'm out for this bike ride on April 17th last year with all this shit going through my head. And bike rides are where I get my ideas mostly. Sometimes running, and this is actually one of the things that's in the holy shit moment, is that the metabolic difficulty of the exercise is a great time, especially exercising outdoors, is a great time to have a holy shit moment. But there's two things that you have to understand when it comes to that. That one is that if it's an incredibly complex exercise, like downhill skiing where you're going through moguls, you're
Right.
not going to have an epiphany because you're focusing on, where the moguls
Like
are.
staying alive and stuff.
Yeah, exactly. Whereas cross country skiing, just flat going through, is less mentally taxing. So that's when it's more likely to happen. Also, is the metabolic challenge. Running for me is a lot harder than it is to cycle. And if you're pushing yourself hard in running, that's taking up a bunch of brain power. Whereas cycling is more of an autopilot thing for me.
Right.
So sorry for all the preamble explanation, but I'm on
No,
this
I
bike.
love that. I love that. No, but that's valuable, and I love how it ties back to the previous time I had you on the podcast.
So I'm on this bike ride where, I mean, sometimes I have writing ideas, and it's why I carry my phone in the back of my jersey. Sometimes I'll pull it out and I'll start voice recording
Right.
ideas. And on this bike ride, when I'm in a shit mood and just, not my writing career's on life support, and I left something out. I had been talking to my agent about my next book, that he was saying that, he wasn't super hopeful that we were going to be able to sell a book because
Right.
my previous one had gone poorly, but we were going to try. and he wanted me to come up with some ideas, more self-help type of ideas,
Right.
like the holy shit moment, that could really grab a publishing house. And I'd come up with this list of 10 ideas. And it was on this bike ride that I realized I don't want to write any of those. Like I am just not, I am done with that shit. I'm done with writing about fitness. I'm done with self-help. I've done it for years, and I didn't have I published 2 books and neither of them were great sellers. It's not being the rewarding career that I really want. And then it popped into my head on this bike ride, just this very simple, specific idea that having a large Facebook following, I had about 80,000 followers at that time, people knew that I was a history guy, that I'd had a history master's degree. And I thought, oh, fuck it. I'm going to write an on this day in history post in my, sweary, sarcastic, entertaining style. And I'm going to post it to Facebook. And that was it. That was the in toto of the idea, was just write this one and post it. And then I thought, yeah, okay, that's what I'm going to do. So I went home and I looked at for the next day what type of thing happened on April 18th, and start scrolling through. And I found a thing about where Martin Luther told the Pope to fuck off, in terms of, he wouldn't back down on his 95 thesis thing. And that's what I wrote about. And then I posted it to Facebook the next day, and it did okay. It did all right. And I thought, well, that was fun. I'm going to do it again. And so the next day I wrote another one that was about Mae West, who was sentenced to 10 days in jail for her play Sex, a Broadway debut play in which she wrote, starred, directed, and produced. And she was sentenced to 10 days in jail for corrupting the morals of youth. And that one blew up. It was the second one, and it just blew up. It got a ton of shares across social media, and people were saying, you should turn these into a book. After 2 days, they were saying, we want a book. And I said, fuck yeah, you're going to get a book. So I blew off my agent. I said, you know what? I'm not going to do this self-help thing. I'm going to work on something else for a while. And in the first month, there was 1 million views. And then by the fall, it was averaging almost 5 million views a month. And
Wow.
I'm like, yeah, I'm doing the right thing here. And then after that was the Patreon, and it actually started making money.
Okay, before we get to that, because I'm really intrigued to ask about that. How? I mean, I love the fact that you went back to your history roots, right? This is the thing that you were passionate about, and the Sweary Historian, of course, which I initially misread as the Sweaty Historian, and I thought, well, because the guy works out too, so
I can understand that.
But so you know so much about history, and there's so much material, and obviously more than one thing happens on a day. How did you decide, Martin Luther on this day and Mae West on that day, or whatever how does that fall together? Like, were there days when you went, oh man, I got like 5 things I can write about for this day?
Well, more recently, I've been taking suggestions, but at first, I would just scroll through Wikipedia, where you just go to Wikipedia and you look up that date. And that was how I first started to get ideas.
Okay.
And I just scrolled through, go boring, 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 boring. And I would just wait for something to grab my attention.
Okay.
That it was a combination of 2 things. One was, well, no, more than 2 things. But initially, there had to be a spark of excitement where I want to write about that.
Right.
Another was that, feeling that I could do a good job, but I also would consider, is this going to be popular? Are people going to enjoy this? And that didn't always rule the day, but sometimes it did. Other times I said, well, I know this isn't going to be popular, but we need diversity. And the ones that are more North American, Western European, North American centric are always more popular. That doesn't mean that's all I write about, because people need to learn about stuff that's happening in other parts of the world.
Right.
So, it's a reality that stuff that happens in places outside of Western Europe and North America just aren't as popular. but I don't give a shit. I need to cover that anyway because it needs to be a well-rounded education in this book throughout the year. And other times it's or over time, what I've done is I've come to seek out ones that replicate some of the most popular ones in terms of something that was little known, but that makes for a cool, funny story that just really amps up people's emotions and makes them want to share it. So.
Well, it strikes me, and I have only read a handful of them as I'm kind of working my way slowly day by day through the book. But what I love about it is once the pandemic's over, the next time I'm at a dinner party, I'm going to have some really cool tidbits of historical trivia that's going to be, I mean, fun, enlightening, like a combination of things. I may be the life of the party because I bought this.
You know what's really startled and pleased me since the book came out 9 days ago
Has it only been 9 days?
Yeah, 9 days since it
Wow.
was first published. Is that people are sending me photos and telling me stories. They're sending me pics of their teenagers reading the book.
Oh my God.
And they said, and the book is just shy of 160,000 words. So it's a long book, and it has variations on the word fuck over 1,000 times in the book. Calling Nazis like brainless fuck puddles and motherfucker this and that, and it's just full of F-bombs, and people are letting their 13 and 14-year-olds read it, and I'm like, that's cool. So,
well, I don't think it'll get picked up by school curriculum for
school. Scholastic isn't going to republish it.
Okay.
But somebody sent me a message just yesterday saying that my kid, who never reads anything except for, I think she said it was manga or graphic novels or something, has been hiding in his room for the last 2 days with your book.
Well, let's talk about the fact that history was always dry and boring for me in school, because it wasn't until I discovered haunted ghost walks that I went, oh, history can be fun.
Mm-hmm.
In this particular case, you're taking history and you are teaching. You have to say, I can't believe that I have to tell you that Nazis are bad. I actually have to start off with that. I can't believe I have to say this. But you've made history fun for kids and adults alike.
I didn't realize that the kids thing was going to happen. I did not write this book for kids.
No, obviously, because you used a few sweary words. So yeah. I'm curious, when you talked about you released it on Facebook to your Facebook group, and you're just like writing and just checking out the feedback. When did you decide to move over or start releasing stuff on Patreon? How did that process work?
So a month after I started the column, I was talking to my agent about, I said, look, this has been going on for a month. It's got 1 million views in the first month. I'm done with self-help. What do you think? Right. And he said, well, this is a brilliant pivot. I think that this is a smart idea for you. Self-help wasn't working for you. And then he said, but he said, but publishers don't want 365 things. They want one thing. And my book actually has 366 because I, of course, had to include leap year. But so he asked me to come up with an idea that was a more big think history book. And the Holy Shit Moment was a big think book. I knew what a big think was. So I really started considering that and came up with an idea that I made 2 pages. I wrote 2 pages of an outline to tell him what I thought it was about. And he loved it. He thought the idea was fantastic. And he said, write an introduction and we'll get a proposal going. So I wrote a 9,500 word introduction, plus all the additional proposal stuff for a book called Greedy Sexist Religious Bigots Who Hate Science. And what it is, it's about 6 chronic failures that humans have committed again and again and again across history.
Right.
And the title kind of gives it away: Greedy, Sexist, Religious Bigots Who Hate Science. And I was that long ass introduction was some of the best writing I ever did. I slaved over that for months while I was writing the daily column. And so we started pitching that in October, and we got a lot of really positive feedback about the writing and everything, but no takers. Nobody wanted it. And I think that, I talked to my agent about it, and we believe that the publishing industry is very traditional and very sort of fearful and conservative. And what I think happened is that, first of all, my last book hadn't sold, so I wasn't like this proven seller. And it was only very recently, like 5 months previous, had I switched genres seemingly out of the blue. I took this, I suddenly became this history guy out of nowhere. And 5 months later, I'm pitching this really big idea for a book. And, I'm not a history professor. I don't have a PhD. So they're like, nah, I think we're going to pass.
Right.
And I had been counting on selling that book to make money. And that book is still going to happen one day. It's going to be delayed a bit. And so I went to Facebook and I said, I've been hearing about various platforms for making money. I'm thinking about launching something. And two things came up. One was that I was overwhelmed with comments of people saying, basically, it's about fucking time. I would love to give you money. And I was like, okay, thanks. That's awesome. And one of the ones that was often suggested was Patreon, just launching a subscription service. And so I kept the column on Facebook, but started putting other stuff on Patreon that some of it was public, but a lot of it was behind a paywall. And very quickly, like I was leery about this because I'd seen so many other writers doing Patreons that made a few $100 a month, and almost nobody breaking 1,000, and only fewer than 3% of Patreon creators make more than $1,000 a month.
Right.
And I was like, do I want to put all this work into something if it's not going to make me money? And I was over $1,000 in a few hours after I announced it.
In a few hours.
Yeah, $1,000 a month in monthly subscribers in just a few hours. And I thought, okay, well, this is obviously going to work. So I got very creative in terms of promoting my Patreon, using social media to promote Patreon to get more subscribers.
Right.
And I used the daily column to do it, but not just that, I made specific posts to really encourage people to subscribe to my Patreon. And before long, I was like, fuck the publishing industry. Like this is where it's at. This is where the money is. And so I kept pushing that. And then within 3 months, I was in the top 30 of all writers on the platform.
Wow.
And which got the attention of another platform. So this is where I pause and let you ask a question.
Wait a second. You're already doing well on Facebook. You've got the Patreon thing going. There's another platform?
Yeah, well, I mean, there's another platform. Yeah, so there was were lots of different platforms that had been suggested, and Patreon was just sort of like the big boy. It was well known,
right?
And it seemed like okay, there was a lot of comfort level
Blockbuster.
there, and but the one thing was that they weren't doing much other than providing a platform and taking a cut. And the cut is substantial. Like all of these platforms take a pretty big chunk of your money.
Right.
And so then out of the blue, a representative from Substack gets in touch after I've been on Patreon for a few months and starts spinning me a pretty convincing pitch about why I should move to Substack. That they're willing to help me go over there and be successful. And and I talked it over with my wife, and I ran some numbers, and I started looking at it and looking at the platform. And the thing about Patreon is that it's not super writer centric, whereas Substack is very writer centric. And
Right.
they have some really well known big writers over there. Their number one creator on the platform is a historian, Heather Cox Richardson,
Okay.
is who she's very popular on Facebook as well. But and I follow her. I'm a big fan of hers, and I thought, well, if she's their number one, then that speaks well because I really admired her work. And it's much more writer oriented, and they just seem to manage the whole. Their model is seems to be different,
Right.
where they encourage people to subscribe for free, and they encourage their creators to give most of their stuff away for free,
Right.
and to only put a portion behind the paywall,
Right.
and that people will subscribe for free and get used to getting all that free stuff, and then eventually they will become such fans that they're like, I want to see the other 10%. I got to have it. Or
Right.
I like this person so much, I want to give them money. That kind of thing. Like yesterday, I had a post yesterday about the Women's March for Our Lives that was in reaction to the partial birth abortion ban. And wasn't a big post, didn't go big on social media at all. But all of a sudden, I got a shit ton of new subscribers yesterday. And the only thing that I can imagine as to why is that I have a lot of free subscribers right now, and I also have a lot of paid subscribers. But suddenly, a lot of those free ones converted to paid. And the only thing I can think is that they got that post, which was free, and they read it, and they thought, I like this guy, I want to give him money. that's the only
Right.
that's
Yeah.
that's the only thing I can imagine, is that post struck a chord with them, and they decided, okay, it's time for me to subscribe. And it seems to make sense that, yeah, I love it when people subscribe to the free stuff. Everybody's welcome to do that, and if you never give me a dime, that's fine. But that seems to be a good model, that you've got lots of readers reading your free stuff, and over time some of them are just going to convert and start giving you money, and they make it easy to become a paying customer.
Well, I love that because it almost sounds like somebody who's thinking of starting a newsletter, that sort of thing. You can publish for free. You can use the Substack as a writer for free, right? It doesn't cost you anything to
Right.
publish to the platform.
It's when you decide to start accepting payments, they take their cut.
Right.
And
Which
it
is
works out
yeah.
to, they take 10%, and then there's the processing fees on top of that,
Right.
which are substantial. But it ends up being, it's pretty compatible to Patreon.
Right. But I love this model because you'd mentioned it a couple times. You said the people were like, "Oh, finally, I can give you some money because you've been
Mhm.
entertaining me for free." I remember I read one of your articles on Medium, and the minute I saw the byline, I'm like, "Oh, he's got a new book out. I'm going to go buy it because I like him." Because people tend to buy products from people they know, like, and admire, right? So that's kind of a it kind of and I've seen industry studies that say that, yeah, that's still the number one reason why people purchase things, right? Because of that personal recommendation, which is fairly
And
powerful.
I think that people develop an emotional attachment to authors, which, me as an author, it kind of blows me away. Like, I just think I'm just an ordinary guy, right? I don't understand why people have this sort of affinity or affection for me, that they would want to give me their money. I didn't really think that I deserved it. And then recently, one of my favorite authors, who was a big influence on me. I've been reading him since I was a teen. Science fiction author named John Varley. He had a quadruple bypass surgery and was struggling financially. And another science fiction author, Spider Robinson, set up a GoFundMe to help him through this financial difficulty. And I got the email about it, and I didn't hesitate. I gave him $200 because I'm like, well, this guy has entertained me endlessly. I adore this man. Of course, I'm going to give him a bunch of money. Not only that, then I turned around and I used my social media to blast it out there, and a whole bunch of commenters were done. I'm giving him money because I
John
love
Varley,
his writing.
of course. Yeah.
And so it made me realize it's like, it's not that I think I'm anywhere near as good a writer as John Varley is, but for some people, they kind of feel about me the way that I feel about John Varley, which again is weird and I don't get it. but it was originally set, the GoFundMe was set at 25,000. And last time I looked, it was at almost 40,000. And so there was a lot of people that were like, yeah, John, we're here for you. And it amazed me that that's great. Now I'm able to make a living, and people are buying the book as well, which is also nice.
Well, and that's what I want to get to. So you've had the giving the content out on Facebook, the Patreon, you've got the Substack. You've earned
the Patreon
money.
Shut down now.
Patreon has
switch, just over a week ago.
Right. So you've migrated over to...
Yeah, it's all done. The announcement's done. Patreon's closed. Substack is the new place.
So the idea to publish this book, to actually release on this day in history, shit went down in ebook format, in print book format. People already had the content. Why would a book be a good idea?
Because people are buying it.
You've given away the apparently a lot of people are buying it.
I think that, well, not only that, but when I launched Substack, 3 or 4 days before I launched the Substack, like three days before the book came out. And on that Substack, free for everyone, is a page that has links to every single on this day in history shit went down post going back the previous year. But I had links to 363 of them, and then number 3, 6, 4, 5, and 6 were being published in full on Substack after that.
Right.
So there is no reason to buy my book. If you want to, I mean, it's been edited, it's been cleaned up, so they're improved by about 5 or 10% since then. But if you want to read them all, you just go to jamesfell.substack.com and find that master document. You can read every single one. Plus, I'm working on year 2 now. You can read year 2 for free as well. You don't have to pay a dime, but people seem to want to anyway because they want it in book format. And it does seem like print is beating ebook by a fair margin. Like, what was it, like 6 or 7 to 1 or something like that?
Yeah, which is typical of nonfiction, especially. I mean, this is a book that is going to sit on the back of my toilet because it's kind of like
down.
But shit's going down all the time. But it's kind of like, I have time to read this one day, this one article, this one page. That's it, right? Like, it's like an Uncle John's bathroom reader kind of, right, with this small short reading.
At my age, I can get through at least 5 of those stories by the time I'm finished.
But so how did you, was this something you did with your agent? How did you go about the process of this book? Because I don't think you pitched it to a publisher.
No, I didn't. So my agent has been aware. I send him emails every couple of weeks, letting him know everything that's going on, because I am not necessarily done with the publishing industry. So that book I mentioned, Greedy, Sexist, Religious Bigots Who Hate Science, I might drop the Who Hate Science or put it into a subtitle or something like that, because Greedy, Sexist, Religious Bigots just has a ring to it.
It does, yeah.
So
I can see the movie being made too.
So we are going to try to pitch that again. And we may pitch year 2 as a traditionally published book. But the thing was that we needed to prove that I could make it as a history writer. Right. And the climb up the charts on Patreon, the move to Substack, and getting headhunted by a competitive organization, and the great sales that have been coming in already for the Shit Went Down book. All of those things are things that will help us allow us to repitch greedy, sexist, religious. I'm just going to call it GSRB, and so that's the goal, is that probably early next year, because what I want to do is we're still pushing out Shit Went Down right now as a self-published book.
Pushing out. That's funny.
Yeah, that's good Freudian slip or something. We're pushing it out as a Mother's Day gift, and then a Father's Day gift, and then in the fall I'm really going to hammer people as a holiday
Christmas
gift.
Yeah.
And or whatever it is that you celebrate, and get it for a stocking stuffer, or give it to your kids or friends or whatever, because it's kind of that perfect, I need to buy this person something, but I don't want to spend a ton of money. Yeah, $20, sure, why not?
Yeah.
And I really do think a lot of people have said, I bought 4 of them, 1 for me and 3 for gifts. And so
you do get that with nonfiction, where people
we are seeing a lot of gift purchases on this book. So I'm going to wait until the new year, when we've got almost a year's full of sales, and then we may pitch year 2 of more Shit Went Down, or we may pitch GSRB, or we may pitch them both. I'm not
Right.
sure, but the thing is that if it's year 2 of Shit Went Down that a publisher says, okay, we want to publish this book, they're going to have to give me a lot of money in advance, because of the amount of money that I'm making self-publishing this one. That's what they've got to compete with. So why would I'm not, I've already traditionally published a book with a major publishing house. That part of my ego has been stroked. So I'm not going to do it again just to say that I got published by a big publishing house. No, fucking pay me. You're going to have to make it financially worth my while, and give me an advance that is at least as much as what I think I would make self-publishing.
Right. And self-publishing in all its guises, right?
Mm-hmm.
Releasing the
Yeah.
ebook, releasing the print book, making it available through subscription services where people are like, yeah, of course I'll give you this much money a month because I love your stuff.
Mm-hmm.
I love that. So the freedom that probably empowers you and your agent with a lot more ability to come to the table and go, hey, look what we got here. Like, we have a guy with an audience,
Yeah.
a proven track record.
The arrogant part of me, after having been rejected last time in a post-COVID world where I can actually, because when we pitched Holy Shit Moment, I traveled to New York and met face to face with all the big publishing companies. I'm really looking forward to hopefully being able to go back to New York into those boardrooms and say, I don't fucking need you. So, make it worth my while.
Right. Wow.
So, yeah, I'm not coming here with my hat in my hand.
Please, sir. Well,
may I have another book deal, sir?
See, I'm imagining the ad at Christmas time using a dub over of Cousin Eddie from Christmas Vacation saying, Clark, that's the gift that keeps on giving, that Jelly of the Month Club. I can see that. I can see that as one of the potential memes that get shared. He's holding a copy of the shipment.
And I thought about doing advertising for this book, but I could, I think, if I was willing to get creative, and I might still, but the thing is that we tried advertising Holy Shit Moment and it just got balked because of the word shit, even though it had,
yes, that's right.
even though it had the exclamation mark in place of the letter I, we couldn't get Facebook approval. And from what I understand, Amazon's the same way. Yep. So I part of me thinks, fuck it. I'm doing this podcast. I did John Scalzi's Big Idea, and that's it. That is the only PR, and no advertising, strictly social media and word of mouth. And
content. No, you've been sharing content from the book, and that has served as the best advertising you can ask.
And I write stories. What's interesting is that for both driving things like Patreon and Substack subscriptions, as well as driving book sales, because I'll look at the Amazon rankings after I do something. What is fascinating is that, so there's the daily history column that appears, in full on Facebook every day. Not anymore. Now it's in full on Substack and you just get the teaser on Facebook. But for a full year, the full thing was there. And when I launched the Patreon in November, at the end of every Facebook post, at the end of every history story, was subscribe to my Patreon. And even if it was a really popular story that was seen by like 500,000 people, the number of new Patreon subscribers was not huge. It wasn't that big. But it was when I did a post that was specifically designed, that was not a history post, but a social media, Facebook post that was specifically yet creatively designed to encourage people to subscribe to Patreon. That was what the whole post was about. And sometimes it didn't look like that was where it was going. It was meandering, and they would have to click to see more and read. And then boom, at the end, subscribe to my Patreon, motherfucker. And those posts are what drove subscribers.
Wow.
Same thing with book sales. So once the book became available, there were popular posts right at the end. Get the fucking book. Like, this post that you just read, that you liked, that you thought was cool, you can buy the book that this post is in. And it's still, sales were okay. We would see a really popular one, and then we would see a jump in the Amazon ratings, but not a huge one. But when I got creative and made a separate post, because I think people get blind to bylines. They read the post, and once the post is done, they're out. They see the same byline, get the book, subscribe to Patreon, subscribe to Substack. They see that over and over again, and they learn to ignore it. Whereas if they read a post where the entire purpose of that post, even if it takes them on a weird journey, is about driving them to buy, they say, okay, and they do it. And that is, I've done this dozens of times. This is all personal metrics, but I've looked at it so many times, I can't deny that you have to make the decision that a byline on content by itself isn't going to sell very much. You have to creatively tell people to buy something or to subscribe to something.
Blatantly too. I mean,
Blatantly.
And again, you're like right in your face. It's like, hey, MF, like that's exactly what works. And authors are not good at that. It's like, well, I kind of have a book here. If you feel like it, maybe you can consider looking at it.
Yeah, this is where the MBA came in handy for sure. I was a pretty good marketing and sales guy for a while.
Yeah, it's like, it feels like Samuel Jackson's like, get the book, motherfucker. Like, that's what he's, it's like, okay, I got it. I'm getting it. Put the gun away.
Fucking pay
me. But that is fantastic. Thank you so much for sharing this journey. James, where can people find out more about you? Where can they subscribe to you on Substack? Where can they check you out? Where can they buy the book?
So lots of links. So since we're mostly talking about the book first is the easiest thing is type in jamesfell.com. And if you go there, you're going to get redirected because I don't have a website there. It's just I bought the URL just a while ago because some other asshole was holding on to it forever and doing nothing with it, but it's mine now. Anyway, if you go to jamesfell.com, you're going to get redirected to my old fitness site, bodyforwife.com/books. And so it's going to take you to my books page, which has a shit ton of links from myriad buyers that you can choose whichever one you want, whichever country you're in, and buy it there. And Substack, strongly encourage you to subscribe, even just for free. You don't need to give me money yet. I'll convince you to give me money later. jamesfell.substack.com. And I'm also, a lot of people like my Facebook page, which is /bodyforwife. because again, like I said, I used to be a fitness guy. So Body, BODYFORWIFE is both my Facebook and my Twitter, although I don't like Twitter as much. And I share my teasers to my daily history posts there, but if you want to read the whole thing, they're just on Substack, and you get them right into your email inbox every morning. You don't even have to go to Substack. You can just read them in your email.
Which is nice, yeah.
And there's also a link to the audio. I've been doing audio versions as well. I started for year 2, and people seem to like that. And that's only on Substack.
Oh, cool.
But yeah,
so they can listen to you.
Sorry?
They can listen to your daily.
Yeah.
That
Yes,
is awesome.
I just started with the day the book came out. I started reading year 2, and they take like 3.5 minutes to read, and people seem to be enjoying those as well. But yeah, the Facebook page is where I just I'll post memes and dumb shit and funny things. So if you are a fan of Facebook, I think it's almost 150,000 followers there now. And actually, that's one thing that I like to bring up in terms of the reinforcement that this really was the right move for me, was that when I started this a year ago, I had taken 9 years to build my Facebook page up to 80,000 followers.
Right.
And then a year later, it's almost 150,000.
Wow.
So, it climbed by almost 70,000 in a year. I think that says something that the move to history was a smart one.
Awesome. Well, thank you for sharing all those smart moves with me today. James, thanks again for coming on the podcast.
Thanks. Anytime, man. That's I'll do it again next year for year 2 of Shit Went Down, if you like.
Oh, I love that. Thanks. So one of the things I love best about this conversation with James is, so I had him on my podcast in February 2019, and it was episode 60 of the podcast. So now it's episode 190. And in that last episode, he was here talking about his traditionally published book. I remember talking about how I had seen an article he had shared on social media. It might have been on Medium, might have been Facebook. But at the end, there was a byline that said, James is the author of The Holy Shit Moment. And I immediately went out and bought the book. I bought it in hardcover, and then I bought it in audio. So I listened to it, but I wanted to have a copy of it. I was excited to talk to him. I found out he was Canadian, so I brought him on my show. And then, in the course of a year, he moved, or a year and a bit. His next book was completely different topic area. It was nonfiction, but it was historical. So he did that shift, but he also, self-published it. He actually published it himself. But what I love about the path he's taken is he has not closed any of the opportunities or options available to him. What he's done is he's leveraged and empowered himself by recognizing that he is the IP creator. He is the value generator. And he is going to get as much as he can for the work that he's doing. And so again, he's not opposed to working with traditional publishers. He still has an agent who is pitching another book, potentially the second book in the On This Day in History Shit Went Down. Could be I was going to call it Inglorious Bastards, but the other awesome title that he was looking at. And I love the fact that he's open to all of it. And he's open to multiple streams of income. So he's really, obviously the MBA came in handy there. But obviously what I love about this is he's recognizing the value in his creative content. He even recognizes the value of free and content marketing and giving away stuff for free. But on the flip side, he also recognizes the critical importance of blatantly asking for money, blatantly asking for people to buy the book. And so I love that he's got this unabashed approach to it. And obviously this was an unedited episode with lots of swear words. And I love that stick your neck out attitude. So that's the kind of winning attitude I love. I'm real eager. I'm so excited because I do have some insights into how phenomenally well this book is doing. And so this is the great thing, or the funny thing is his print book sales are far, far outpacing the ebook sales, because this is definitely a book people want a physical copy of. They want a physical copy in hand. And even though he makes more on the ebook sales than the print book sales. He's still killing it on the print book sales, which is just phenomenal to see. And he's doing it in a way that's different than what the money would be. So, we get an advance from a publisher. It gets paid out, 33% at a time over the course of 1 or 2 or 3 years. Whereas with this one, he invested everything up front and getting the design and the editing and publishing all done. But, the money's flowing to him within, 45 days after the end of the month, directly to him, which is just a phenomenal thing. Not even to mention, the money has already flowed to him through Patreon, through Substack, through those direct sources. So what a phenomenal way that this author is empowering himself as a writer. So that's the end of the reflection. There's just one last thing I want to mention for this episode. I want to thank all the patrons of this podcast who support this podcast over at patreon.com/starkreflections. I want to say thank you, patrons, so much for supporting this podcast. You're showing me that you really appreciate it and want it to go on. So for as little as $1, $3, or $5 a month, I have an awesome group of people who have been supporting this podcast. And what I'm doing, and I'm going to be reaching out to you, it'll be on Friday, May 7th, is I've got 2 codes for a special story bundle, writing-related story bundle called the Write Stuff Story Bundle. Now, this is only available in May 2020, and it's an exclusive story bundle. And you go to storybundle.com/writing, and you'll find it there. And I'm going to be giving randomly to 2 of my patrons 2 codes to download this for free. And you'll hear from me on May 7th, so you'll know it's you almost immediately. But what this story bundle is for $5, you can get 4 books. The first one is Write a Conference Proposal by Johanna Rothman. The other book is Your Author Business Plan by Joanna Penn. The next one is The 30-Day Novel and Beyond by Stefan Mears. And the last one is Cash Flow for Creators by Michael W. Lucas. Now, both Joanna and Michael have been guests on previous episodes of this podcast. But yes, for $5, you can get all 4 of those books. Or, if you wanted to get all of the 10 books in this bundle, including 4 exclusive to this bundle books, for $15 total. You can get How to Write a Novel in Half a Month by Dean Wesley Smith, which is exclusive to this. A Writer's Introduction to Social Media Marketing by Tanya D. Price, MBA, also exclusive to this bundle. You can get Working with Libraries and Bookstores by me. Now, God, you can't even get Working for Libraries and Bookstores for $5 because it's a more expensive book. You can also get Lauren L. Coleman's exclusive title, Crowdfunding Your Fiction. Lauren has done some phenomenal work on Patreon, or Kickstarter, I should say, for crowdfunding, from the gaming side of things, and fiction and gaming and those related titles. You can also get this other exclusive title by Christine Catherine Rush, Tips About the Film/TV Industry for Novelists. Oh my God, I've heard her talk on this. It's amazing. And a special one by Dean Wesley Smith from WMG Publishing presents called Dealing with Toxic People. Yeah, for $15, you can get all 10 of those books. What a phenomenal steal. But it's only available until May 25th, 2021. And what I am doing is I'm putting all of my patrons in a random draw for the 2 free download codes that can get you all 10 books in this bundle. And that's me thanking you for being such an awesome patron of the Stark Reflections podcast. But listeners, do take note that this is a fantastic deal, and it's only going to be available until May 25th, 2021. So that's my little kind of sort of ad read after my reflection. Thank you so much for listening to the Stark Reflections podcast. If you like this podcast, I would appreciate it if you could share it with someone that you think would find the podcast interesting or valuable. Or, if you're so inclined, you can leave a review over on the podcatcher of your choice. Feel free to leave comments over at starkreflections.ca. So again, this was episode 190. And so, until next week and next episode, this is Mark Leslie Lefebvre wishing you great writing and good Stark Reflections.
Thank you for listening to the Stark Reflections podcast. You can find show notes for each episode at starkreflections.ca.
The music for this podcast, Laser Groove, was composed and produced by Kevin MacLeod. Check out more of Kevin's great music at incomptech.com.